Well, sport, they put sport on youth. Well, last year, actually, sport get a minute and 23 seconds. Well, this year, sport get 10 seconds. It had nothing for sport. The only thing he talk about sport is, hey boy, we athletes did well without the PNM help. So Jah raise them athletes. That, no joke, I just put LMAO. Look, sport. Kamla, sport. Okay. He congratulated athletes who performed despite the PNM and named the facilities that were built by Kamla. that is sport. Let me move on, yes. Wow.
I thought it would have been a no-brainer that sport would have been a definite area of focus for a government on the proverbial ropes. But I was wrong, as the PNM has fallen prey to the rope-a-dope and has totally ignored sport as an industry, sport tourism, sport medicine tourism, sport marketing, sport media, sport merchandising, sport growth polls, sports management, sport as a unifier, health and sport. The Honorable Minister of Sport, who now holds the portfolio when she was moved from tourism to sport, posted on a public Facebook page, when your own dog bite you, you're very well bitten. She then attacked the sport portfolio with the zeal of a PNM meat eater at a Diwali curry dinner. The Minister of Finance, in his budget debate 2021-2022, mentioned the construction of a pool in Mova, and I was shocked, as video footage would show the Honorable Prime Minister, the then Minister of Public Utilities, and now Minister of National Security, and other ministers cutting the ribbon for this pool in Mova on June 23rd, 2019. But in a budget in 2021-2022, the PNM is taking credit again for building the pool. I guess it's a 50-meter now. They built 25 twice. The Honorable Minister also said that this brand new pool was also upgraded in the same financial year. So they constructed a pool in a financial year and upgraded it. That is the efficiency of the PNM. They said that opportunities for sport tourism were abounding and that Trinidad and Tobago would be set to benefit from hosting of cricket matches, West Indies versus England. Well, before this budget is even passed in the Senate, yesterday the Cricket West Indies announced the host for the series between England and the West Indies from January to March 2022. And not one game, not one ball, not one stump, not one catch for Trinidad and Tobago. Such is the policy of the PNM. They then said that we will get World Cup cricket under 19 in January 2022. We wait for that. And they talked about a powerboat race, a sport tourism. Maybe we will put some stands in the Gulf of Paria for people to buy tickets to sit down on top of Kingfish. This PNM government has no ideas, no plans, no investment, no money, and no respect for sport. On top of that, the Honorable Minister of Finance said on page 107 of the budget, the Minister of Sport and Community Development will provide further details on our sporting programs during the debate. I'm waiting with bated breath. I have not heard a whisper. Maybe no one lives there. 26,000 words in a budget, less than 300 on sport, 3 hours and 38 minutes of PNM drivel, 1.5 minutes on sport. No contribution by the Minister of Sports. PNM has no understanding of sport, no plan for sport, no respect for sport. The United National Congress understands the magic of sport, the opportunities in sport, and the power of sport. I will illustrate that power here today by presenting the real sport budget, since it seems that some members of the PNM feel that is the opposition, who does not have the Prime Minister, who does not form the cabinet, who has control of not one red cent, that we are the ones who should carry the budget debate. Okay, I accept your challenge. I carry the budget debate here on sport today, since you have shirked your duty. The PNM, I will paint a true picture of the incompetence, lack of vision, lack of planning, lack of understanding, and lack of ability of this heartless, arrogant failure of a PNM government. as pellucidly depicted by this inept, incomplete, contradictory budget, which has been aptly described by the honorable leader of the opposition as a declaration of war on the people. Sport is of the people. Sport represents the hope of the people. Sport allows people to dream. Sport unites the people. Sport inspires the people. Sport disciplines generations of people. Sport increases the productivity of the people. Tolerance is engendered through sport. To disrespect sport is to disrespect all of the people. This PNM budget completely ignores sport. Therefore, it is clear that this PNM government uplifts themselves while oppressing the people. Sports can go where politics cannot. This Rowley PNM has fractured our nation along multiple dimensions, along the dimensions of race, class, haves versus have-nots, religion, geographic location, and now the vaccinated versus the non-vaccinated, as those with natural immunity figure out and try to feel where they belong in this society of manufactured and manipulated science. Sport, and only sport, can fill the chasms of division exacerbated by this PNM Prime Minister and this PNM government. 1989, November 19th, one can remember total unity in red, white, and black across Trinidad and Senator De Freitas, Tobago, as our strike squad prepared to take on the USA. November 2005, even though our footballers were thousands of miles away playing in Bahrain, you could feel the tension, the love, the support across religions, races, ethnicities, people, all of Trinidad and Tobago united and went up in celebration as Dwight York took the corner and Dennis Torlis Lawrence jumped to head home to send Trinidad and Tobago to qualify for the World Cup. The unity was solid. In July 2006, as our Soca Warriors played in Germany, Trinbagonians in Germany, outside Germany, the diaspora, and here on both islands were glued to their TV in a feeling of patriotic love, togetherness. Businesses were flourishing, sponsorship endorsements were occurring as we held on to the mighty Sweden of Ibrahimovic and Lundberg and held them 0-0 to a draw. We held on to the mighty United Kingdom to 83 minutes 0-0 before a Rastaman's locks were pulled. But the love, the respect, the patriotism, and the opportunity was there. August 2012, Keshawn Walcott prepared to throw a javelin that had been handed to him, purchased by the taxpayers' money, well before anyone knew him, by that then Minister of Sport of the United National Congress and of the People's Partnership, as the PNM never thought and saw it fit to outfit these athletes. And that javelin, as we sat and watched him in the final of the London Olympics, flew 84 meters, 58 centimeters to bring gold and glory with Trinidad and Tobago emblazoned on his chest. That was the investment of Kamla Persad-Bissessar and the People's Partnership in their belief in sport. Nelson Mandela brought a separated, divided racially South Africa together by utilizing sport. It was rugby, a previously white Anglo-Saxon game, the team, the Proteas, that the black South Africans had grown to hate. Nelson Mandela embraced them, unified the country through the World Cup Rugby in 1995 by embracing the Proteas, being forgiven, and hosting a World Cup and going on to victory. Mandela later said in 2000, and I quote, "Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite the people in ways that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where there was only despair." Nelson Mandela. This, I say, is true. Unfortunately, sport does not have sufficient power to ignite a fire of love, care, respect, empathy, and patriotism in this decadent, heartless, oppressive PNM government. It is therefore no surprise that this government, clawing its way into power on the devilish shoulders of deceit and division, would make it its mission to decimate sport. In 1995, 1996, as I coached athletes here in Trinidad and Tobago to go to the Olympics, the PNM still did not respect sport. I had to coach them in a pool in Jumbo Gym on McIntyre Street in St. Augustine, in a pool that if you swim straight, you would bump into the wall because the mason was not skillful and the wall was built with a curve. But when I would go to Mexico, Nelson Vargas, who later became the Minister of Sport in Mexico, would offer all of his facilities. He had 45 25-meter pools and 11 50-meter pools across Mexico. He allowed a Trinbagonian coach with Trinbagonian athletes preparing for the Olympics to choose what pool at what altitude I wanted to train in for 4 weeks free of charge. Such is the respect for sport and the opportunities of other countries. Sport is so powerful that some leaders will go to all sorts of nefarious means to try to show that they are a great country. The Sochi Olympics 2014 was an example of this, when Vladimir Putin was trying to show the world that Russia was still great, that its economic, social powers and its geopolitical position would be improved. He created such a dastardly plan to cheat, to actually build into the doping control a secret compartment where his KGB agents had invented a tool to unlock the samples of gold medal winning athletes. And he would take dirty samples, open them and put in clean samples just to present an idea of power in sport. That just shows how important sport is. Yet in Trinidad and Tobago, we have to listen for 3 hours and 38 minutes and get a minute and a half on sport. I cry shame on this government for not understanding. In USA, the mighty USA, the greatest power in the world, they win at every sport except football, what they call soccer. And back in 1970s and 1980s, they tried, and they knew that to be a superpower, you must control and be competitive in the main sport in the world, the greatest participatory sport, which is football. They invested in the grassroots programs, in the coaches, in the leagues, in the YMCA, in the states, in the communities, in the high schools. And now the USA is a perennial qualifier, a top-ranked team in the top 10, reaching the quarterfinal of the World Cup and having won several female World Cups and Olympic gold medals. Why? Because sport is power, sport is hope, sport is patriotism, sport is diversification, sport is economic opportunity, but the PNM cannot see this. The ethos of sport, it's a natural inculcation of values such as leadership, good health, teamwork, fair play, self-reliance, and continuous improvement. All these facets are missing in this PNM government. The proof is in the pudding. As I gaze at the PNM government bench, in the Senate, I see not one single former national athlete, 0 out of 16. Yet on the UNC opposition bench, I see 2 former national athletes who put blood, sweat, and tears for this country. 2 out of 6, 33.33%, as opposed to 0 times 0 on the PNM side. Probably why this budget attempted to zero-rate curry and smoke herring twice. The importance of sport for the development of women. This PNM cut funding to sport to the bare bones. The UNC had women in sport programs, coaching caravan, the coach education and certification program, the Spirit of Sport Awards, recognizing female trainers, coaches, psychologists, physiotherapists across the board. That was cancelled and shut down in 2016 by the PNM. This minister got resources on request for women footballers back in 2013, 2014. Not only did the UNC Minister of Sport then go to the cabinet to get resources for the women's senior national team, he quietly, without fanfare, without picture, without video, without live on Facebook, went twice a week and coached these senior women and took them to the closest they have ever come to World Cup qualification, just stumbling on the last hurdle. That's what a UNC Minister of Sport does, without picture, without big check, without any gallery. This PNM put a foreign futsal coach from the PNM Normalization Committee with the PNM chairman and the PNM NFM chairman on the board. They just disrespected every single coach in Trinidad and Tobago and chose a man, a foreigner, who's coaching futsal to coach our women football. That is like putting a coach who coaches diving to coach swimming. They're two separate, different sports. And then we hear yesterday, after an episode of Douglas Politics, that he has been fired and Kenwin Jones, a proud Trinbagonian, has been hired. So Douglas Politics will run the Ministry of Sport. I have no problem with that. A misogynist will never have the advancement of women at the top of his agenda, Madam Senator. National pride through sport is a policy across the globe. One can think back to the East Germans. East Germany, when the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, the world became aware of a plan so secret by the East German government. It was as secret as their nuclear war, nuclear defense, nuclear proliferation. It was a plan to promote the socialist ideals of the government and the policies of their politics by performance and international superiority in sport through a systematic doping program. This is how far people will go. While I will never, ever endorse or encourage cheating at any level, I am making these points to show you that what lengths people will go to emphasize sport. Yet in Trinidad and Tobago, I have to sit here and debate a budget that has ignored sport completely, ignored our children, ignored the dreams of children, ignored the talent identification, the opportunities to wear the red, white, and black proudly, to build businesses for media, for endorsement, for sport tourism medicine. It's all been neglected, and that is a great opportunity for diversification of the economy. Sport is $1 trillion a year business globally. We can see also in 1982 in Cuba, I was privileged to go to witness the Central American and Caribbean Games. And Cuba was dominating in all sports because Fidel Castro had done two things on his agenda: health for his people and sport. And Cuba was winning medals in every sphere except swimming. They had one opportunity, Pedro Hernandez in the 200 meters breaststroke, and I was sitting there waiting for this event to go. And before that was the 400 freestyle. At that time, I saw about 14 men in jackets looking like Senator Wade Mark in his OWTU outfit coming and standing up and standing still. Fidel Castro came and sat about 8 meters away from me. He had arrived early to see Cuba win their gold medal in the 200 breaststroke. An unknown Cuban swimmer was in the 400-meter freestyle, and he was in lane 8. Lane 8 means he was supposed to come dead last by a good mile. Alberto Mestre, the great Venezuelan, was in lane 4, a man who had won 50-meter, 100-meter, 200-meter, and the 800 and 1500-meter freestyles, and this was the 400. Lopez, when they introduced him in lane 8, Fidel Castro stood up and clapped twice. And Lopez swam 22 seconds faster than he ever swam, passed out at the end and was taken to the hospital for oxygen, winning a silver medal. Never before, never after did he swim so fast. But this is the passion and inspiration that sports provides for a country. Australia, the United Kingdom, the USA, and Colorado have invested in their academies and the institutes of sport with sports science, sport testing, sports products, sports health, food. And we in Trinidad and Tobago are now sitting in the doldrums, the darkness, without investment, without belief, without even a concept. Nicholas Paul, our great cyclist who looks to be the greatest, fastest cyclist in the world, has to train outside of Trinidad and Tobago, even though he has the best cycling velodrome in the Western Hemisphere, because we have not embarked on investment in coaches, in sports science, in massage therapy, in physiotherapy for this great athlete. The Aquatic Center has sat there without investment during the months of November to January, with the Thanksgiving and Christmas into the holidays in the winter in the north. That Aquatic Center, if marketed properly through our students who are abroad on scholarship or away at universities in the USA, Canada, and Europe, could generate upwards of 2.1 million US in that 2.5-month period, enough to run that facility for the entire year so our children can use it free of charge. but there is no dream, no mission. The National Tennis Center here, built by the United National Congress, has now been getting great acclaim, but the PNM has no plans and programs. And yes, they will blame COVID, but COVID only reached in December 2019 and arrived here on our shores in February, March 2020. What happened to 2015, 16, 17, 18, and 19? All our stadia, recreational grounds are in a state of total disrepair. The budget is saying, the Honorable Minister of Finance said that they have just undertaken an audit to see what should be done. I am telling you, as Minister of Sport back in 2012, this was done for all our stadia. The Dwight York Stadium, 120 million was approved for all the infrastructure that had been ravaged by the sea, sand and salt, all the electrical and the plumbing works that needed to be done, the roof that was about to collapse, the Hazy Crawford Stadium, same thing. This work had been done. So for a PNM minister to come now and pretend after 6 years that they are now taking an assessment of what they may invest in, which will take another 4 years, is totally disrespectful and not on. Sport is so powerful that it engendered political change. In 1980, the USA boycotted the Moscow Olympics to show the world and to put pressure on Russia to get out of Afghanistan. In 1984, many African nations boycotted the Los Angeles Olympics because Ronald Reagan, president then, was refusing to speak down and was continuing to conduct business with the apartheid regime in South Africa. The African country sent such a powerful message through sport that Ronald Reagan, within a year, capitulated and ceased relations with the apartheid regime in South Africa. Muhammad Ali fought for civil rights for black people and took himself out of the running for large money world championships to fight, to use the power of sport to unite and to alert the world about the Jim Crow civil rights abuses in the USA, and he brought sweeping change that continues in the Black Lives Matter all now. In 1968 Mexico Games, we can still see the raised fist of Tommy Smith and John Carlos after the 200 meters that sent a signal to the world that we must treat everybody equally, and the fight continues. They showed solidarity at that time with that raised glove fist with Stokely Carmichael, better known as Kwame Ture, a man born in Trinidad and Tobago, but who was banned by the PNM, the black leader of the Black Panthers, who was hailed across the globe for fighting for black people, was banned by the People's National Movement from ever coming home. It was the East Indian Prime Minister Bastio Pandey in 1997 who dropped that ban and allowed Stokely Carmichael to return to the land of his birth, but yet we play race card for election. Shame, I cry shame. This is the globally accepted manifestation and application of the phenomenon that is the power of sport. But not for this PNM, not for this Prime Minister, not for this Minister of Finance, not in this budget 2021-2022, certainly not for this Minister of Sport. Like stick break in the PNM ears. He who feels it normally knows it. But this PNM government feels nothing. The sting, the pain, the neglect felt by our athletes as they fell one by one in the face of insurmountable odds at the Tokyo Olympics a mere 2 months ago, through no fault of their own, but due to the lack of care, thought, investment, passion, and resources proffered by this neglectful PNM, our athletes were set up, even attacked by the PNM mayor of San Fernando, Junior Regrello, who attacked the athletes and say that they were a waste of time and a waste of taxpayers' money and they should not go. Yet his PNM government has wasted $59,000 on roaming bill because we didn't know how to switch off the roaming, $3 million on half a golf course in Carnage, millions on paintings, $80 million on an IFC with no results whatsoever, just to give Papa Small Pin a walk. $64 million on advice for restructuring of Petrotrin, millions to defend the Attorney General's bad law in the courts, but they cannot invest in our athletes and our children. The PNM nonchalantly, carelessly, heartlessly sent our warriors into battle unprepared, under-resourced, and disrespected. by 5 years of budget cuts and the minister who power walks for exercise? Did this painful experience leave an indelible mark on the consciousness of the PNM, seeing our athletes fall without a medal in Tokyo? No. In the words of Sprangalang, it got worse. They blame COVID, but COVID not here 6 years. COVID presented the governments of other countries with sporting bodies, coaches, athletes, with a modicum of knowledge, understanding, and planning around the globe with opportunities. COVID-19 lockdowns and COVID-19 put areas where coaches, trainers, sportsmen, scientists could try new things, could have more focus on the athletes. That was what was manifested itself in the great performances we are seeing at the Olympics and in other sporting activities now. Those with brain took advantage. We in Trinidad and Tobago were stuck, unfortunately, with the PNM. As seen by the PNM has bungled COVID. The PNM has bungled sport. Sporting opportunity was lost during this COVID due to porous borders here in Trinidad and Tobago. Still, the Cutlass vessels are not operational, even though that was the panacea for porous borders that have existed before COVID and during COVID, bringing death and destruction. Brazilian variant, Delta variant, and any variant that could swim across. It even brought a boat dead with whatever it came with, and it's still parked up in Tobago. Non-existent vaccination procurement early on, a knowledge vacuum that has created the highest levels of vaccine hesitancy in the Caribbean. Only 41% of our country is now fully vaccinated because there was no discussion, no education, no humility. There was arrogance and there was abuse, and people are fed up, and there was a vacuum that was filled by some misinformation, some good information, and a lot of information that was not directed by the government because the government had no plan. And this budget continues the no plan PNM. Poor science, poor nonsensical regulations that say we can go in a water park to use recycled water with chlorine but cannot go in the pristine sea created by God Almighty. We cannot go in the rivers. We cannot go in the open air and the sunlight. But we can go in a friend and financier's water park to spend money. No organized sport for 18 months. The world progressed and we regressed. It's the worst ever Olympic performance